Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Chicago Grand Tour that just happened this past weekend with the newly released Evangelion set, and it looked like to have a real impact on the format, both in the standalone decks that performed quite well as just some cards that you're going to want to be sprinkling into your existing deck. So if you haven't got this set already, definitely do recommend checking it out, because I think it's going to lead in very well into set 5 as well, because there's just some good cards that you can put into a lot of decks in it that are not just solely focused on the EVA 01 or 02 decks, but just generic good cards I think will perform well even going into the BSS 05 meta here in just a few short months. And on top of that, this will be the Pro Tour meta, so I think we have a pretty good look of how things are going to go, and I would absolutely expect to see some Evangelion decks topping the Pro Tour later on in August. So with that out of the way, let's get right into the list. Now, yes, obligatory disclaimer again that because we are not having top cut, this is just after standings. So your undefeated player was Chris with Ira. And yes, this is your standard Ira list. We saw it in BSS 04, and we see it here again. Probably the surprising one for most people is that there was no Hydra list in top 8, but Ira did stand the test of time and once again won another event. Now, the thing I do want to stress here, as we're going to kind of talk about with the Double Deadly later on, is that Ira itself can only hit those single symbol spirits, which is really important when you think about the Evangelion decks that have AT field, which means they cannot be destroyed, but then also some of the key win cons in Evangelion are also dual symbol, so you actually get to keep 2 spirits on board against Ira traditionally instead of just losing your entire field. So I do think the Evangelion decks are positioned quite well once we see a little bit more time to expand on them, but something like Ira and just how explosive it can be in drawing a bunch of cards, you know, is still going to remain a very viable threat. So really quickly, as well as you know him, you love him, or you hate him, Ira on top. When it comes into play off of the Ascend effect, you get to destroy all 1 symbol spirits and draw a card for each of the spirit destroyed. So not only is this effectively a great control piece because it allows you to catch back up into the game and draw a bunch of cards to get more answers, you can cycle off some of your own early spirits that you just don't care about to get even more draw if they're just kind of sitting on the board and not doing anything. Now, that said, we do see the full 4 gray Servant of Seaworms here, which is your Big Bang energy on a body, instead of some lists that we're seeing only 2. So we are full 8 pieces of the combo going into Ira, and then you'll also have 4 Nova. So in the past, we have seen more of a mid-range is kind of more fair version of Ira. We've seen a mid-range would have a couple more extra pieces of Big Bang energy. And this one is now just, nope, we are all in. Here's the combo. We want to be able to line up those turns and get back into the game, and then still have Nova on the top end to heal back up as well, which is super important when we're seeing all these aggressive strategies come online in this format. Other key players like Andromeda just being your good 6-cost spirit that you can send off if you need to. Destroys Nexuses, can have Confront when you need it. It really is just a staple that I'm sure is going to continue to see play into the following set. We have Drought Dragon, which is one of my favorite cards from BSS 04 because it's just good removal that can be splashed in so many decks. And then, of course, also goes well into Ira because it's cost 6 or higher. And then we have our normal spell package that we've seen time and time again across the format with your Ice Shields, Dream Bombs, Avalanches, Star Blast Draw, and Ancient Draw being the newest one, which is again going to allow you to draw some cards and try to find those Ascend pieces. So overall, yes, it is a fairly stock list from a combo version I think a lot of people would expect, but that is totally fine because it gets the job done and it still has the inescapable Avalanches as kind of your answer to Hydra, or at least buys you a turn to be able to bounce something back, or it's just a general good card in as well. And when you have things like Ira and Nova to effectively, you know, ramp because you get to heal back up and then get to clear out the board, you are going to have those extra cores available. In the sideboard, we do see Third Eye Snake, which is an interesting one. It's kind of the anti-ramp piece where you get to draw some extra cards. Heavy Barrel, we've seen this time and time again, just being able to hit the when summon effects when it's destroyed. Triceratops is the interesting one that a lot of us kind of hope that this would lead into like, oh, cool, let's get Pterosaurs back on the map. Our opponent can't bounce our stuff anymore, right? It's just a really good value guy that you can stick on because he has an easy to access level 3, gets Confront, can chew up the board, things of that nature. But then you're like, well, if everyone's playing Dream Bomb and Inescapable Avalanches, I guess we just want this guy for protection, right? And that's totally fine as well, but I gotta be honest, you know, free Ovi in BSS 05. Let's get him back. Let's get Pterosaurs back on the menu because I think it's about time. More Nexus removable in Feral Slash, the 4th copy of Inescapable Avalanche, and the 4th copy of Dream Bomb for when you just need to go all in on all the bounce effects under the sun. So once again, huge congrats to Chris for taking down the Chicago Regional. And a huge shout out to our friend Alex, who came in second with this very similar archetype in Ira. But yes, as I mentioned in all my videos, the only thing we're going to cover is the top performing list of each archetype. Go check them out on Eggman's website if you want to see the rest. Moving on to our 5-1s, we have Austin with the green aggro. But also you'll notice is we do have EVA 08 sniper rifle version, which is a extra copy of our Emerald Pincer. So this one is super interesting because yes, it does have one less reduction because it's meant to be in the green-red EVA deck in the current set. But when the spirits summon, you can just tap something down and then the AT field protects it against destruction offense. So it's just really good threat to stick on the board while still being able to just say, hey, sorry, gonna remove your guy that we don't want to have to worry about, right? And clear through. So yes, this is one of the premier aggro decks in the format. And I think it's going to stick around quite honestly because again, we have another version of Ant-Man and we have another version now of Emerald Pincer that you just have that extra consistency that you're going to want to see time and time again. And then we also know just how good Flash has been with things like Scoop Owl and Leaf Wolf to give you either that extension of damage or Scoop Wolf being able to protect yourself, then tap something else down and give you that extra damage on the next turn that your opponent might not have been ready for. So overall, yes, it's a little bit early to say. I do think white aggro is still going to be very good. Don't get me wrong. You know, obviously white aggro does white aggro things. But for me personally, I definitely love green aggro got to evolve in this set just from a consistency standpoint. And I really do hope we get to see more exploration on this idea because yes, it is just low to ground threats, swing out, hope they don't have floodstream sort of thing. But with some of the EVA cards that we're now having like AT field and other ways to kind of protect our board or extend on them, I could definitely see a more flash heavy focus version coming to the front with this style of green deck. Now, other things to kind of comment here really quickly is just the LD, which is just your tap something down and ramp one on attack. Of course, Beam Rifle or Thorn Prison being our staple, you know, green magic that we want to be using that can help clear the board and tap down 2 spirits. And then a lot of it is just otherwise really efficient spirits that we see, and as well as the Wave Rider, which we covered in a previous video with BSS04, getting another good swift target because it has the double reduction. So important here is that, you know, you couldn't do things like Ant-Man into LD, which then frees up the cores for your flash spirits because they do have to be in the reserve for when you play them. So there's quite a few different ways now in green aggro to extend out on your game plans while still staying true to your package of sometimes, hey, here's all my map butterflies, turn stuff sideways and close the game that way, right? So green aggro, I definitely think if you are looking forward to playing this version or if you just want to have another deck in your back pocket, especially because this one's like, what, 20 bucks probably to build out because it doesn't have ice shields, you just pick up, you know, the 8 EVA cards that you would need, and it's otherwise, you know, going to be something that you have already, but is very much a strong contender to consider. Other than that, we have another Wave Rider to finish out the 4 copies, another Ant-Man cover out the 4 copies. Counter Sword is something we've seen quite a bit as the anti-on-summon effect and just bounce it back to top of deck. I do think this one's going to see a bit more play, even more so in BSS05, as we're seeing some already strong when summoned effects, and I assume that the X-Rares are going to follow in that path. So Counter Sword probably not going anywhere, probably still going to be pretty good. Derm Dyna, the unblockable guy himself, we know him, we love him or hate him, again, depending on which side of the table you're on, but just making sure that, hey, is my opponent playing Nexus cards? All right, here we go. Here's my unblockable guy. Let's try getting the last chip damage, and is effectively just the burn card, right, for what this deck would be looking to do. And then Plant Trap, honestly, I don't love it in this list as much as the Prey Birds Tokiwa deck that we've covered in the past, but Plant Trap can still surprise your opponent if you know that they're playing a lot of when summoned effects to really get the most value out of it and just clear the board or just restand some of your guys when you really need to on attack, right? So there's a couple different variations that you could pull off with it, but ultimately Thorn Prison or Beam Rifle, as they are using the Gundam alt art here, is really going to be that MVP time and time again in terms of how else are we clearing the board or getting additional attacks through within Green's package itself. Now, as I mentioned, another shout out to the Michigan crew. Again, I got to give a special shout out to 3 of the guys from Michigan made top 8 and then 4th one made top 16 with Angels, no less. So that is really exciting. But we have in third white aggro with Tai. And again, as I mentioned, this is just your typical Valkyrie miss, get stuff off the board. We have the Durham Dyna. Now that we are in color, we get the reductions. We have extra stuff that can make unblockable. It is just going to get through for damage when you really need it to. Now, the interesting part is we've typically seen the white aggro list just rely all in on things like the regain, which you see here with the 4 copies that allows you to restand. You get to do shenanigans off of the library Saga, which lets you get a core back to then pay for the regain and just be all in aggressive, where this one does actually have a little bit more play to it because we do have things like the Peggy Scion where we can get maybe a slower start and then line up turns where you want to have Beam Rifle into Dream Bomb to really then clear out the last couple points of damage, right? But otherwise, we still have our 1 cost, 1 cost free guys, spirits to play. We have our 2 cost free. So there's still a bunch of the free guys that are in here that can swing through damage when we really need it. But having those Durham Dyna main deck instead of side deck, we see a lot of times, can definitely help push a little bit more damage. And then Star Blessed draw, because again, there's a lot of unsummons on the field right now. If you just are trying to dig for that last card, maybe it's a Durham Dyna, maybe it's a Dream Bomb just to clear the way. Getting that Star Blessed draw trigger and drawing 4 feels so good, especially after your opponent just cracked an Ira. Going into the sideboard, and this is where more of it really starts to come together, is we actually have a semi-transitional sideboard, I'll say, right? We do see the Valkyrie Hilder, which is our another bounce house special, as it works. It just gets to remove a threat. And then we also have the other key spirit from BSS04, and one that I really want to have more time to brew with, which is really just the all-star of white mid-range tempo bounce house, remove threats. Your opponent can't stick anything on board, and you're just slowly gaining advantage that way while you're increasing these symbols on your side of the board while denying your opponent's theirs. So we could see that playing a role here as well, but definitely a card I'd love to go back to and see more of how it plays out, because it just seemed like such a fun archetype. I just didn't have the time to test it. Seabed Lighthouse, great for cutting off magic out of your opponents. Just a good card in general. Suppression, we saw this tech very early on, all the way back to set 1, where it's like, if you're in a more aggressive matchup, and especially because you're in white already, you can pay this for just 2. Getting to have that suppression to effectively shut off their turn of aggression is so strong. And then we have another copy of Thorn Prison in the sideboard. Now moving on to our 4/2s, we have Corey with the Machine Beast control deck. And another one that, yes, we do have Frost Tiger at the top end, right? We still have 4 elements. We still have 4 of the Newmangard City, which makes paying those high-costed cards a lot easier. But we also have things like 5th Angel, which just gets to randomly mill some cards. And then we have Bridget, which also lets you just get to control the board and lock things down or bounce them. And then Imperial Knight as well, just giving you some main deck answers against Hydra, because when they pop it, they also have to strip cores off their guy, and it's just so strong as an immediate answer. So yes, it does have like that early game, Skepibot and the Viking that we've seen 4 and 4, and then we have the Newmangard and Frost Tiger and the control aspects that I had mentioned. But then again, really leaning into some interesting tech choices here in the main deck as well, that gives a little bit more game that your opponent might not be expecting. So yes, this is your typical white control, a little bit slower to start, but once you get those elephants online, which can make sure you untap every turn, so you have the cores to use for your magic, or you have that Frost Tiger, which can just be a very real threat once it gets online, to get the damage through, and also having the Nexus to support it can be a really scary threat. And then, of course, Strong Draw just being a good filter option, and the other kind of spells that we've already talked about are magic cards and kind of playing a key role in this meta, right? So as we are in this, again, BSS 4.5 meta, we are going to, of course, continue to see these staple magic cards continue to get used in each of these decks, that hopefully we get to see a little bit of a shakeup in BSS 05 when we get to more of the dual color role, which I am really excited for. Moving on from there, we have Aegis, which is just great to get a little bit of a life back. Another great Machine Beast target. We have the Photobot, which allows it to recycle itself, so just a good defender that keep coming back. Beam Rifle, clearing the way for when you need to get the damage in. Blizzard Wall, and then Counter Sword is just some more tech options that you could have out of your sideboard. Again, as we kind of mentioned earlier in the video as well. So again, congrats to Corey. Moving on from there, we have Jacob with the Serpents deck, or Serpants, if you saw PPG's post. And yes, this is, again, something that's just been a tried and true staple from the BSSO format that continues to perform well, and I would definitely expect it to continue to perform well in the current format. Now, the thing to stress about this list in particular is that we do have the Double Deadly, which, as I mentioned, is only going to kill single symbol spirits, similar to Ira's effect, which again is a little bit easier to play around if you are playing the Evangelion deck, because you have good double symbol spirits that are likely not going to die to their effects unless there's like a core removal out of the sideboard that gets you, and then you can just put up AT field on one of your other guys as well, right, to not be destroyed by the effect. So really strong tech options that we have with Eva that I'm curious to see how it goes. But traditional purple, good stuff, right? We have a lot of Serpents that will replace themselves or have curse, so they're really good into the white control decks of making the threat of, hey, if you block this, you're going to lose your guy. We have a bunch of draw effects as well as the good old standard of Assassin and Cavalier. Beldegor being the MVP of being able to pop 3-cost spirits and comes back from the graveyard time and time again. Also, with all the new Shadow support, Beldegor seems even better somehow in set 5, which is really crazy, but shout out to Beldegor to continue getting buffs. We have the new Serpent package from set 4, so again, getting the ability to get to destroy something by sacrificing your cursed spirits. Then you get more value off sacrificing those spirits. You have Rotting Swamp, which is going to draw you cards when your spirits die, right? Just a lot of cycling through your deck and getting extra value. Black Lance or Best Lance, which is draw 2 plus curse. And I know a lot of people are still like on the fence about Viper Dragon, but I still love his ability to be able to attack with your Serpents into something and make sure it takes them out, because again, your Serpents are going to have curse and just allow you to have more board controlling options. And then with all this curse, we of course got to run the good old Maduke, which is going to turn into Blood Curse and just make it a real pain for your opponent to, you know, block your guys, because they're going to die and trigger Blood Curse and then come back and attack again, right? And that's why we see 2 more of this in the sideboard, which is a really key effect against the white control decks. It can be really annoying against a lot of decks in general. Yes, we are seeing an all-time high of white bounce effects across multiple decks, but I think it's still a very good card to consider in the current format. Beyond that, we do have the good old staple Deadly Balance, which is just a sacrifice effect, and this does hit everything in this case. And again, because we are playing Rotting Swamp, a lot of times what we can do if we're trying to clear out a board or just want to get more value, we can attack with our Assassin, get the card draw off of it, pop our Deadly Balance, remove one of their guys, draw a card off Rotting Swamp, and then help clear the way for some of our other stuff, which then might be a Cavalier attack into threatening a Beldegor or multiple Beldegor activations, which can be real threats as well. So with that, you know, being a very good purple deck, not going to go anywhere. Definitely would expect to see more Serpents in future events, especially in Canada, which I'll be trying to go to that event. So not sure where I'm going to play yet, but purple is looking pretty good. Now, getting into some of the other things that we were expecting is a Evangelion deck looking at EVA01 with the double symbol spirit that is, hey, we are going to play the role of Ira and just clear the board and be a double spirit threat. Now, what's really important is that this does require you to ascend off of EVA01 for the effect, so you do want to end up running a lot of the EVA01 package that we do see split between the starter deck and the main set, but there is a good enough value engine there for purple that you are okay doing that. Now, the one thing to call out here is that this does function a little bit more as a core removal style of deck because of what we've seen in the card effects themselves. So running things like Mordred and Nemesis just turns out to be fine. And then of course, Nemesis also has the very strong when destroyed ability. And then we're actually running the full 09 into the Beldegor package, where we can go 7 into a 4-drop because it has Immortal 7. Attack with it. If they block it, then we can bring back our Beldegors. So in the very late game, when you've cycled through so much of your deck and have seen so much and get this even just one spirit into the graveyard with those Beldegors, you're now able to turn into a multi-attack finish that can be really, really strong. Now, the important thing to note with the pseudo evolution second phase is that it is a when summoned effect. So of course, purple's main benefit is going to be coming from the attack phase and getting a bunch of triggers and other stuff. So yes, it is a little bit of a, hey, this is obviously a balancing thing to why it's not, you know, on attack instead, but still a very strong effect that's also going to have an AT field behind it. So if you need to protect it, you absolutely can, but just a massive body for a double symbol spirit that can clear through. Now, some of the other lower end EVA 01 stuff is really just about filtering or drawing extra cards, making sure that you have enough. We have the 07, which is just when destroyed, draw a card. So again, just more of that filtering going on. And then of course we do need to run some number of the Shinji Nexus because of how it combos with the rest of the EVA 01 cards, be it for either, core removal, card draw, and then even the Asuka, which is just giving us extra ways to get cores back, which can be really important for when you're trying to line up some extra turns of having cores left over to play your Magic. So in terms of like where we saw the more, hey, how does Evangelion impact the meta in terms of, in my opinion, directly buffing some older archetypes that might not have gotten a lot of support through set 3 and set 4. I think this is an absolutely amazing showcase, and with additional testing and tinkering, I think a hybrid list like this could perform very well in future events. Obviously, it went 4 and 2 here, but I would expect this one to kind of stay on top and continue to perform as we look forward to future events for Battle Spirit Saga, as well as like the online events or in-person regionals. So really curious to see if anyone takes the time to tinker with this one a little bit more and see if it can pop up again. This is something that I haven't had a chance to test with yet, so I'm not sure from my own, like I can't provide information of like, oh, here's some other card tech choices, right, that I might include, but something to consider all the same. And then the last one I gotta give a shout out to, as you might know him as Basura in the community Discord, is Manuel with the 0208 deck list. And this is the one that I love. So I had mentioned very early on in spoilers, like, hey, red-green slaps, I'm putting a lot of stock into this deck. I think it's going to be insane. But not only did they build the more aggressive package, I think that there is still a more mid-range focused version of this deck that can perform very well, right? When we see EVA 01 and EVA 08, they are pretty locked into where they want to be. This deck in particular, because of the flexibility that you have in a lot of the red-green cards being more flexible, kind of where the design space wants to go, there is a lot more that you can do with this. And again, obviously we still have to run things like Dream Bomb because of the format, right? So it's not 100% an Evangelion deck, but it's basically an Evangelion deck beyond that, right? The vast majority of it is going to be that. So what do we love about this deck? Honestly, just everything, right? You get a 6-drop that's going to have a double symbol. It's going to get a massive BP boost. It's going to have confront when it attacks. It's going to get to restand when it destroys something. So it destroys your opponent's board. It has protection with AT field. It gets double symbol. It becomes a massive, massive 11k BP just by itself, not counting the other boosts that you're going to get from the Nexus. Like, this card slaps, and it is just such an insanely strong X-Rare that I have no doubt in my mind that we are going to see. Even looking into BSS 05, this deck, this red-green version of Evangelion, is 100% going to continue on into BSS 05, and in my opinion, be a very, very real threat. Because again, what's the best part about having red and green? Oh, by the way, you get reductions for some of the best spells to be playing in the game, right? We have Star Blessed Draw. We know how good it feels to punish those on-summon effects and draw 4. And we also know how important it is to play the Beam Rifle to clear the way. And then we also have the EVA 08, which is just insane with its flash ability and giving you a big body and even tapping down more things. So just the amount of flexibility that you have in this deck and the different angles that you can attack from, it is so exciting to see what this can do. Outside of that, because of the Vili Nexus, we have the 2-drop, which we get to play for free. So it's just extra aggressive. We have the target attack that we can just take out our opponent's key spirits if we need to. We have different ways to boost the BP. We have the 4-drop, which just says, hey, draw even more cards, right? There is just so much that you can be doing in this deck that I absolutely think, even if you're not the biggest fan of Evangelion, you're like, hey, look, I'm just waiting until BSS 05, whatever. Get this deck and start testing, because it is something that you're going to see and something that is going to be a very real threat in the near future. Again, both locals, the next event, the next online event, all the above. And then also it just has the most gorgeous SPR Nexus cards as well. playing a key role here. So yes, we are a little bit heavy on the Nexus with going up to 10, but honestly, them just being so good. Obviously, your kind of core Nexus always going to be a 4 of, because the double reduction is so important for speeding out your plays. But then both Mari and Asuka is going to be so good for getting the extra effects and each of the spirits that they support. So again, huge shout out to all the Michigan crew. 4 of them in top 16, 3 of them in top 8. Love you guys. Good to see. Good showing. Hope to see you at the Canada event as well. So with that, that is our top 8 report. Now, yes, I will mention here at the bottom, if you've been following the community page on YouTube or following me on Twitter, yes, I did have to take a break due to some life events, unfortunately. Not feeling 100% back yet, but I want to at least get out there and get this Grand Tour video up, try to get back in the groove of things. Obviously, the Worlds Beyond Delay really hits hard. Like, a lot of things kind of going on in the background. I'm playing Grand Archive, but don't really love it enough to do content on it, sort of thing yet, in terms of also just being stupid expensive. So I'm not sure I'm going to do much more there. And then, yeah, just kind of waiting until Union Arena. Obviously, I'm going to be playing Battle Spirits and going to some events where I can, but feels like kind of a down period while we wait for October. And then that's going to be a large focus with, a new set every month. We got the pre-release to look forward to, and then also going to be going to Gen Con. So, hey, if you're going to Gen Con, let me know. Would love to see you there and hopefully run into some people, be it for Bandai games or otherwise. I know some Force of Will people are going as well that I'm looking forward to seeing. And Gen Con just being honestly the best TCG convention of the year every single year. So excited to be going back. So with that, let me know your thoughts on the Chicago meta. Are you expecting Evangelion to pop up even more in future events? Or is Ira going to be the king of the format again and reign from above until we get our BSS 05 set later on this year? Let me know your thoughts. Until then, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.